Lovely to meet you this morning.
Very nice to meet you.
Obviously you have a new DVD coming out, Force Majeure. I think that's the correct pronunciation. It means act of God, and you've said in a previous interview, acts of God are always negative. You never get an act of God where everyone wakes up and's got free lemonade.
Yeah.
What about something like manna from heaven or feeding of the 5,000?
Well, that was one. There's water into wine. But you see, I actually think force majeure can mean two things. I mean, act of God or force of nature. And I think my argument is that we're forced to be our own force of nature in life because I don't think there is a God. So, and then you can do the feeding of the 5,000, but you just got to get your friends and borrow some fishes. The fishes and loaves, who would actually sit down for fishes and loaves? I'm not sure. Just say, oh yeah, a bit of fish and a bit of bread. It hasn't really caught on, the fishes and loaves thing, ever since then. I just think the bread thing would have worked in the feeding of the 5,000. But these are all miraculous things. I mean, Simon Sharma is just, I think last night, doing a history of the Jews on television, saying that the Bible is not a historical great document for it. But anyway, that's all a long thing. But it's a French title, but it's also English. We all use it in the English language, and acts of force of nature. I think that's what we all do need to be to get through this life, to make the positive things happen in the world. So that is the idea behind it.
Excellent. And you just mentioned that it's a French title. Yeah. And you've attracted a lot of acclaim for being able to perform in French. And
Tout le spectacle français, yeah.
I would pretend to know what that means.
No, I just said the whole the show in French, yes. Which is also downloadable from the website. It's the previous show. It's stripped in French. But yeah, sorry.
How difficult is it to do that? Have you because obviously country to country, cultures vary. There's local jargon and slang. How do you keep up with that and perform,
Well, Python already made this happen. Python is known around the world. Now, there's some it's the references are the problem. I've tried for 10 to 15 years now to just use universal references. So if I'm talking about Greeks or dinosaurs or a squirrel with a gun, or a banjo even, that's a gun, that's a banjo. They in Paris, they can go, oh yeah, squirrels, écureuil, avec un fusil or avec un banjo. They can go, oh yeah, that's stupid. In fact, in France, they don't have much absurdist humour, as they call it, or surreal humour. And I said, but Monty Python. Say, oh yes, we like Monty Python. Not all of them dig it, but the cool people dig Monty Python. But they like people doing it, but they haven't done it much, and now they're only just starting to do it. But everyone in Berlin, in Moscow, where I was playing, in Istanbul, the sort of cooler people, the people with a certain amount of education, they can dig surreal humour, and it's just the references. So my theory is there is no French sense of humour, there is no German sense of humour, there is no Russian sense of humour per se, like a national sense of humour. I just think there is mainstream and alternative sense of humours in every country. So you might say Benny Hill's like a mainstream British sense of humour, but he made all his references, people slapping on heads, naked people running around, and people could understand that in quite a lot of countries. So there you go. And then there's Python is the example of more alternative humour. So you just make your references universal, and then you can play anywhere. And the French are now starting to do it in English. The Germans are already doing it in English, stand-up comedy this is, and the Russians have started doing it in English as well. So everything is changing right at this point that we're doing the interview.
I was going to say, you've mentioned about that you're aiming to do it in Russian. How is that going? Because that's a notoriously difficult language to learn, isn't it?
Well, you see, I don't think any language is that difficult, because all Russians speak Russian, yeah? All Mandarin Chinese kids speak Mandarin Chinese, or French kids speak French or German. There is no section. And we know that some people are really bright and some people are less bright. So if some language was really hard, there should be people saying, okay, here in Russia, these kids just don't speak it, they just point at things. Now, I don't think Russian is that hard. I think now I could be wrong when I get to Russian, because I haven't actually laid in. I've learnt the alphabet. And Dylan Moran has too, and both me and Dylan Moran want to do Russia in Russian. But I'm going to be doing German next year. I'm already touring France in French. German next year, in German in Berlin, 2 months there. Then I'm going to do Spain for Spanish, and then Russian, and then I'll be able to report back more accurately. But I think it's the Cyrillic alphabet that makes us go, whoa, and that letter that looks like that, and there's a big line in the middle of it, I don't even know where to begin on that one. But you just have to get beyond the alphabet, and then I think I can't prove this, but I think it should be. It's definitely doable. It's just the amount of time that you need to put into it. But it's a good thing to do in this time, this land, this third millennium, because you know we're in a financial crisis around the world and whatever, and it's sort of bubbling around at the moment. But then the world tends to go off and become slightly more right-wing and hate other people, and xenophobia turns into like racism and all this kind of stuff. And I'm saying no, let's go the other way. I just played with Force Majeure, just played in Istanbul and Vienna and Berlin in English, and Moscow and St. Petersburg in English, and Belgrade and Zagreb and Ljubljana. So and they were all digging it. And Romania, Bucharest, huge reaction there. We sold 600 tickets in Belgrade in 2 hours. I mean, I've never played there. I haven't released a single. They just got it off the internet since 2007. Everyone's been getting stuff off the internet, which is sort of okay.
Well, on referencing 2 points there, actually, something I got off the internet, and you just mentioned Vienna. And I believe in 2005 at Live 8, you played piano with Majeure on Vienna.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And how on earth did that come about?
I was up at... It was all Live 8 was going on, and Bob Geldof, a lot of people were down in London, and I felt there was big things happening in Scotland, in Edinburgh, so I felt I should go up and help there. And so I just got myself there and started trying to help work with activists there. And I think they said, we'll be in the concert at Live at Murrayfield. And so I was supposed to do stand-up there. And Majeure, who was also there, and so I was doing press with him at the time, he said, why don't you come and play the piano? And you could, because I hear you play piano, and you could come on and just do it. It's not complicated for Vienna. And so I said yes, and he said, I bet you're really worried about this. And I wasn't worried about the piano, I was more worried about the stand-up, because stand-up in large stadiums is still only a semi-tested thing, whereas the piano I was quite happy with, except we were pushed out onto a satellite stage, and it was raining on us. And
must have been great for atmosphere, though.
Oh, it was amazing.
That song.
That's my first live piano gig.
Wow.
Which is 60,000. So I've only done one gig on the piano live, and that was there. But I think it must exist somewhere as on YouTube, but it's not. I wasn't playing very complex piano, but you know, I do love piano. My mum played piano. So.
Awesome. Something that I've got to ask you about. I've actually run 3 marathons myself, very, very slowly, very poorly, and I have no way. I cannot understand how on earth you managed your marathon running exploits. I'm sure it's a question you've been asked before, but how on earth did you do it, mentally and physically?
Well, it's all mental. It's not physical. I mean, the physical is there, but the mental drives the physical. And you know, there's some terribly fit people, men, women, and then they don't go and do something, or they can't do it. It's the mental attitude. So my analogy to you would be, before you did one of your marathons, you must have built up from a 10K to a 20K.
Yeah.
And you must have been at 5K, you were thinking, how the hell can I do a 10K? And then at 10, how can I get to a 20K? Till you get up to 42K, which is a marathon. And that's the thing. It's whatever you get used to, you can do. So you were aiming for something, so you got to it. So I was aiming to run around the country. And it's actually handy if you have a camera team covering you. It's too embarrassing to pull out, but the next one I actually did pull out, because you know, in South Africa, because I got rhabdomyolysis, but they said you were going to drop dead if you didn't drop. So I said, I have to go back and do that again.
I think that's a reasonable excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question for you. You're an associate director at Crystal Palace Football Club.
Yes.
Which must be great, but who is the bigger comedian, you or Ian Holloway?
It's got to be Ian Holloway, but in a good way. Yeah, I mean, we've now got our first win, apparently in the top flight for 20 years, I've heard, in August. In August, and it's our first one back in the Premier League for 8 years. So that was good, and I said this, I wrote a statement when I became Associate Director of Palace, because I've been a Palace fan since I was 16, since 1969, and I just said, all I want is Palace to win every game from now to the end of time. And that is what any supporter wants. Yeah. So that's all I kind of, and England too, I would like them to win, and Team GB, and the Ryder Cup golf team. You know, that's all you want I'm completely like a child when it comes to supporting in sports. Whereas in politics, in life, I'm much more open-minded. In comedy, you see, me and Dylan Moran are going around and playing places in the world. It doesn't matter who's first. Just everyone should come and play in Eastern Europe. and all around the world. I just want to encourage comedians to get up there and do the going around the world with an open hand instead of a closed fist, which seems like a positive way.
Marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.